What's up, savvy expats? If you've been bitching YouTube lately, you've probably heard the same recycled pitch over and over again from every expat vlogger under the sun. Come to the Philippines, it's cheaper, the weather is nicer, the people are friendlier, you can live here on $500 per month. And sure, some of that is true, except for the last part, but here's the thing that nobody's telling you about. Behind the palm tree lined streets, the white sand beaches, and the Instagram sunsets is actually a dark reality that many expats face, but no one dares to talk about. 2 weeks ago, I met a man who had just moved here and he was full of excitement, ready to start his dream retirement life and finally achieve the peace that he worked his entire life for. But within his first month, he was out $7,000. Yes, dollars, not pesos, gone just like that. Not because he was careless, not because he was reckless, but because of one simple mistake. And this mistake is the same mistake that can cost you thousands of dollars, and more importantly than that, destroy the very peace of mind that you initially came here for in the first place. And if you're serious about making this move, you need to hear this story. It might just save you your wallet, and more importantly than that, your sanity. So let's get straight into it. Let me preface by saying that this is the experience of one of my clients who works very closely with me, so for his privacy and out of his respect, I won't disclose his name, but let's say he goes by Ryan. And so contrary to the majority of our expats who reach out to me prior to their arrival in the Philippines, Ryan was actually a month deep already into his new life in the Philippines, if you could even call it a life. And just like you, he came here with the intent to turn off his work brain and turn on his retirement brain. And essentially to live a life where he can kick up his feet, relax, and enjoy finally having peace of mind. But little did Ryan know that the very place that he thought could make his dollars stretch further is actually the very place that would drain his wallet. But why? In a nutshell, it's because he underestimated a multitude of variables that he'd have to take on with this move. He just didn't know what he didn't know. Those variables being, number one, underestimating the differences on how people communicate here versus in the West. What do I mean by that? While yes, the Philippines is a predominantly English-speaking country, what you say to the realtors out here can easily go in one ear and out the other. Because when you try to actually communicate the sort of amenities and the quality of home that you're looking for from a Western perspective, it's not often understood. Reason being is because the only reference point of quality from a local realtor's perspective is only of the units that they have here. Obviously, they don't have a reference point in terms of quality of what you're used to back home. And the second variable that nipped him in the butt was blindly trusting the agents and landlords here. Now, don't get me wrong. Not all realtors and landlords here are untrustworthy, but you will come across a good batch that don't have your best interests in mind, but rather, of course, their best interests in mind, that being their commission. Now, you may be wondering, how was Ryan really getting ripped off or scammed? After all, he is already here in the Philippines. He did meet these agents and landlords face to face, and he did look at these units with his own eyes in person. Well, I'll tell you, I take notes on all of my diagnostic calls with all of our expats, so I'm just gonna relay back to you exactly what Ryan told me. When he landed in the Philippines, he found a condo in BGC that he really liked. This was the very first condo that he moved into. And long story short, this condo was the epitome of uncleanliness. In Ryan's words, it was filthy, it reeked like a sewer, mold was vastly spreading, and the landlord never actually followed up on the mold specialist, which they promised on. The smell of rotting wood flowed through the AC ducts, and the furniture was downright filthy, causing him to scratch his back profusely because of all the bug bites on his back. And Ryan, being desperate to leave, quickly hired a lawyer so that he can get his 4 months deposit back on his unit. And in only after 1 week, just 1 week of living in that condo, he quickly packed up his bags, called it a quits, and was in search for his second home in BGC. Now, after a couple more days of searching, things were actually looking up from here. He found a second condo that he really liked. However, with this condo, not only the same uncleanliness problem, but even worse. It was seemingly clean during the first viewing, but after he put down the first 4 months deposit on the unit, he actually found out there was a roach infestation. And And in his own words, it felt like it wasn't even his own home. As a matter of fact, it felt like he was the one intruding as a guest on the cockroach's home. That's how bad it was. Roaches on the countertops, on the floors, and God knows on the bed while he was sleeping. And bear in mind, this was the state that Ryan came to me in. He was tired, distraught, and desperate. And if I could summarize it in one word, hopeless. And I mean, you could imagine, you worked your entire life leading up to this point. A point in your life where it feels like you can finally sit back, watch the sunset, visit the beaches, kick your feet up, and finally obtain a level of peace that almost in a sense feels like a fantasy back in the West. And the icing on the cake was that Ryan was watching hundreds of these videos from Philippine vloggers that were selling the dream of living on this quote-unquote affordable paradise, only for him to find out that it was neither affordable, neither a paradise. And so Ryan was at a loss and he really didn't know what to do from here. He told me that it was almost as if he was lied to, not only by this so-called dream, but also by the people he worked with from the get-go. And remember, at this point, he had not only been scammed once on a unit, but twice. Because on the flight here, with all of this pent-up hope and expectation on a country that is spoken of so highly of by many vloggers here, it actually ended up becoming a place he began to despise. And that's the last thing that I want for you, to come into the Philippines with these big, lofty retirement plans, only to be let down, and the image of this country being tainted because you let what you didn't know actually sabotage your experience here. And so I asked, and I really couldn't help myself, Ryan, I know it can be pretty touchy, but after you've put a deposit down on 2 different units in the most expensive city in the Philippines, BGC, what's the damage looking like? And he tells me, Evan, I'm down $7,000 after these past 2 months trying to do it alone. And of course, that brings me to ask, I mean, Ryan, why didn't you reach out to me sooner before coming to the Philippines for help then? And he told me, you know, Evan, I thought that because I was already in the Philippines, I was a step ahead of all of your other expats, so I could just handle everything on my own. And he thought that because he was already here, he could vet the landlords and realtors here by himself. And he told me he underestimated the differences of actually understanding the culture and how people communicate here, despite English being spoken. And lo and behold, he ended up working with realtors and landlords that not only lied and scammed him, but even were dishonest with him from the get-go. And by the end of trying to DIY this move completely by himself, he was this close from booking a one-way flight back home to the States and giving up on his dream retirement life in the Philippines. And you can imagine how hard that feels to think that the Philippines is such a beautiful country to live in and that it would be easy to move here, only to end up actually almost despising the country and leaving. However, from there, that's actually what got him on our first initial call together, and I wanted to share the story with you guys so that you can watch out from these potential mistakes when dealing with the wrong individuals in the Philippines. At least from here, you know the red flags to spot. And so that's where me and my team got to work and actually began finding him a new place, which we're still in the process of doing. And so moral of the story, number 1, don't be so fast to trust the realtors and landlords, not only here, but even everywhere in the world, because behind the smiling faces can easily be greedy intentions. And I'll tell you, after having helped over 65, almost going on 70 expats now this year, the majority of leases in the Philippines, especially within Manila, are built and are always in favor for the landlord. Do your due diligence, get to know who you're working with, and when you spot red flags, do not let it go unchecked. In the second lesson, don't use the online property sites to actually find a condo to move into. Based off of what I've heard from a lot of other expats, many of the realtors that they've encountered through these sites that list their properties on these online property sites are either A, very incompetent and hands-off, and B, untrustworthy. But again, like I said, I do not give you this story to place a bad rep on all the realtors and landlords in the Philippines. I do share the story because when I initially heard it with our expat on our first discovery call, I found it very intriguing and I had to share it with you so that you don't encounter the same problems down the line. And so with that, if you want to avoid the same exact experience that Ryan went through and not have to waste over 7 grand just to learn from one mistake, and more than that, actually obtain the peace of mind you came here for in the first place, the link is in the description. Book a call with my team and I will assess exactly how we can help you with handling the full logistics of your move. We'll map out a full A to Z game plan to get you out here as smoothly as possible, and also done the right way. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to play roulette with your move and leave your entire future, a future that you worked years for, into the hands of guesswork. There's a system and there's a process to this, and I want you to know that so that you can live your best life in the Philippines. That's exactly why I make these videos. And I hope that this video provided you tremendous value with how you can actually avoid wasting a ton of time, effort, and money in your transition process to the Philippines. Other than that, thank you for watching Savvy Expats, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care and God bless.